Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast. Once again, we've got some footage from Everything Electric in London. Recently, my early morning digital fireside chat with Ricky Roy, who has just become such an extraordinary fixture in the fully charged galaxy. I don't want to overblow these things. I want to keep them down amongst the weeds. Now, Ricky is just such a joy to have someone with his intelligence, his engineering background, his skills, his way of interpreting things. And he's now done quite a few episodes for us. He's doing a lot more. He's our feet on the ground in the United States. Really valuable member of the team. And what is amazing for us, okay, this is the special thing for us, and this is completely selfish, is when we do events like we did in London, we have this opportunity to get the whole team together, which is really rare. If you think about it, it's really difficult. And even then, we couldn't get the whole team together. We get most of the people. So Ricky came from the United States, Elliot came from China, Helen came from the Antarctic. Not quite, well, she was there, but she came back a few weeks before. So we were all together, which is really unusual. And the whole team, all the production team, all the team that run the actual events, the events team, the sales team, all those people we were all there together. And that is a real special moment for us because, like a lot of people, we kind of work remotely a lot of the time, like I am now. There's no one else here looking at me and making me embarrassed, which is helpful. So it was obviously a real joy to talk to Ricky at the event. And we hadn't done this before, but we did these. We're going to do some more of them where I will interview people that appear regularly on the channel. And it was just brilliant. He's just extraordinary. We do discuss all the things that you might expect. The Cybertruck, which he reviewed for us, and all the new Rivians that are coming out. We discussed a few of those topics. But I think it was very enjoyable. And what we've done is the same as we did with Hannah Ritchie, in that we've added, because the talks are quite short, so we've added a podcast that I did with Ricky a while ago, which, as always, a lot of people haven't seen, so that's why it's good to put these things out again. The Hannah Ritchie episode, really successful. People really loved it. Controversial thumbnail, which keeps changing, but YouTube thumbnails, I'm very proud to say they're out of my remit. They're above my pay grade. I just put a title on it really badly written. It would be awful. So it's good that I don't do them. That's it. So I hope you enjoy this. So please welcome onto the Fully Charged Show podcast, Ricky Roy. Like Everything Electric, you'll love our fun-packed Everything Electric expos around the world. Come and join us in Harrogate, Farnborough and Vancouver. Remember, energy and transport professionals go for free. So I think one of the things I wanted to say when I knew we were going to be talking to Ricky this morning was that really the very initial kernel of why I wanted to do this happened in California. So for some of you may not know this, but I used to make a TV show called the Scrap Heap Challenge. We made an American version that was called Junkyard Wars. We made 5 series of that in California, based in Los Angeles, and we went all over California and New Mexico and Oregon filming tests and all those sort of things. And it was at that period of time when the first inklings of the notion of using batteries that were in computers and laptops and phones, you could put more of them together in a box and put them in a car and make the car drive for quite a long way. And it was really, really early days. This is 2001, 2, 3, that era. And I went in an electric car in that time, and I was thoroughly unimpressed because it just seemed like a kind of a student.
Which one was it?
It was called the T0. So it was and I didn't know. I only found out it was called the T0 probably 10 years later because it was just some guys with this experimental car. It was very fast. I was impressed with it, but I was driving a Mustang, a Ford Mustang with a big throbby engine, and I thought, this is California and it's America and it's this big. So that's what got me going in the morning. Was that. But anyway, that is a lot of the. I think the point I'm trying to make, done it a bit too long, is that the change in the the understanding of what could make us move along a road really happened out of the computer industry and in California. I mean, that it didn't come from Detroit or Frankfurt or anywhere else. It came from America. It came from computer scientists rather than automotive engineers. Would you agree with that? I mean,
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some ways, I think when you have a legacy brand or product that you're selling, it's harder to make that shift. And when you're new and you have nothing to lose, it just becomes that much easier. It kind of ties into how some of these Chinese brands,
what we're seeing here,
which we'll see later on. But it's interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
But I mean, can you just give us because we've never covered that on the show. So for people who will have seen you on the show, but can you, and I've seen 2-Bit Da Vinci, but can you do a quick explanation of how you ended up doing what you're doing? Because we met Ricky from his YouTube channel, 2-Bit Da Vinci, which is a brilliant channel. But you've got an engineering background, am I right?
Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer. I spent 6 years in aerospace engineering and then switched over to software for about 10 years and then decided to go full-time on YouTube about 2 years ago. And it was around the time, I still remember this, Dan came to my house and he was telling me, let's do this, you should be a presenter. And I was really hesitant because we have a big mortgage in California, as you can imagine, 2 young boys, my wife stays at home. So it's kind of a risky moment in my life. And Dan was like, no, you can, it'll be good. He was such a positive push in the right direction for me.
Right.
But that's why I'm able to do this, because if I had a day job and this was part-time, I couldn't do this, right? So, yeah, I have my own YouTube channel called 2-Bit Da Vinci. We try to break down the complicated engineering stories of the day in a fun way. At least we try. And it ties very closely with what we do here. Visions are very similar and very aligned, which is what I love about it.
Yeah. And I mean, it is, we've got to talk about Tesla, obviously, because it's such a Californian story. But that change, when you think, if I put it in a slightly different context, the amount of people I've met in the last 14 years that have tried to start a new car company, and this is all over the world, and it's been a huge amount, and how many have succeeded? Well, still really you could only say one has succeeded. It is remarkable. There's a lot of others that are coming towards a point where you can go, they're nearly succeeding. If they can keep going for another couple of years, they will. But, would you agree with that? Would you say that Tesla have really kicked the world into this, into what we see here?
Yeah, I think 100%. You mentioned putting laptop batteries in cars seemed as crazy as it did to you to everybody else as well, until the guys at Tesla just started doing it. And last year, the best-selling car around the world was the Tesla Model Y.
Yeah.
So that's how far we've come. And Dan, a couple hours ago during the press release, he mentioned that we're in this post-hype era.
Yeah.
Right? It's like 2020 when we first met, or I met the team in Austin. It was all hype. The Porsche Taycan had just come out. There were all these new startups. It was Rivian. They were, close to having their truck. And that was an amazing stage, but now we're post-hype. Now you have to deliver, the reality sinks in. It's really hard to make a new car company. We did the Rivian R2 event, which was in Laguna, right in my backyard. And that is a company that I absolutely love, and I really hope that they do well. The R2 and the R3 are headed to British shores, which is great. But this is kind of make or break for them because they're burning through capital very quickly, and they're not making much money on their early cars. They got to get to that lower cost, higher profit margin car. So it is a very tricky time right now for automotive brands. But like you, I had a chance to sit in that car about 30 minutes ago. It is shockingly good. It will take something really great to dethrone something like the Tesla Model 3, which you and I both have, which is a brilliant car. It's hard to imagine a better daily driver, but that could probably do it. Yeah.
And I think the other thing I'd love to discuss is the changes that are going on. So I had one of my most kind of encouraging podcast interviews was with, and of course now I can't quite remember his name, but you'll help me, Jim, CEO of Ford.
Yeah, Jim Farley.
Jim Farley, thank you. Kind of an important figure. But what he was saying and what has now starting to come to fruition is this gigantic company that is effectively the first mass-produced car maker. I mean, they really created that notion of the production line and all that. And their transition to electric, which is really fraught and really been difficult. But he does seem to be they get batted back and then he pushes forward. So there's this skunk works in Ford that are developing smaller, lighter, cheaper electric cars. That seems to be the gist. Because the F-150, I think, is amazing, but it is about the same size as my house. It's pretty big. And but those are. This is a thing that I've only recently found out. Like the Mustang Mach-E and the Ford F-150, they're not failed. They're selling really, really well, aren't they? I mean,
it's tricky.
Well,
it's
tell
tricky.
me.
They're selling well. They're not selling so well. There's during the pandemic, you could not get an electric car in America. You
Right.
could not. It was 6-month, 8-month wait lists. Now Mach-E's are like parked and ready to sell at dealer
Right.
lots, and they're giving you discounts, right? So the demand has softened, and this is what the media is portraying in the news, saying that the EV market is crashing, no one cares, no one's buying them. That's not true. It's just that maybe right now the demand is more in line with supply.
Yeah.
But going forward, it will be tough. And I think some of these companies are pushing back their initiatives. Ford has dialed back a lot. They've kind of put a hold on some of their factory plans. But one thing I think people are realizing is it's not so much just be electric. Like GM has the Hummer.
Yeah.
A 200 kilowatt-hour battery pack to go as far as our Model 3s go with 70, right? So it's not just going electric, but you have to be smart about it. So Ford has a plan for a very low-cost, more affordable kind of, estate car size new model coming up. So they are planning to do it, but I think they're dialing back and being more strategic. You can't just shotgun and hope something works out. But it's part of the transition. And Ford definitely has great leadership, and I do think that they're going to figure it out.
Right. And then the other one I would love, because we mentioned Rivian, and I just want to quickly check. Francis, can we do the throwing microphone thing? No. There's a microphone. Sorry. Is there just that one there? There's one. Anyway, there's another microphone. I'm looking for it. Oh, is it by the car? Oh, right, okay. So if you want to ask Ricky a question, I just want to open that up to, it would be great if you have a specific question about the American market. But the one thing that I think I really want to talk to you about, because you're the only person I know who's been in one and seen it, is the Cybertruck. Because I think I have mixed emotions. So strangely enough, Chelsea Sexton, who'd done some shows with us before she moved to the White House, was at the launch. And her face when it appeared on the stage, and she clearly most people there thought it was a joke. When everyone was expecting a pickup truck like the F-150, and what they saw was that. But you've now driven it and spent time with it. I have no questions. Yeah. I'm just baffled by it.
Yeah. So when the show first opened, a gentleman walked up to me and said, "Ricky, so glad you're here. Welcome to London. And apologies if the comments on your video were brutal." And I was like, well, okay, it is a polarizing car. That's how polarizing it is when fans of the channel know to come and apologize for what I might have been reading on that. But I mean, that is the nature of something like that. And I think Tesla knew that it was going to have that effect, and it does. Yeah. When I filmed that episode, we tried to get away from people because it was incredibly distracting.
Right.
Like I'd be doing driving impressions, and people were honking their horns.
Right.
And give me thumbs up symbols and stuff. It was just very distracting. So we went to this kind of remote part of northern Bay Area. And even then, people who were hiking would just find us and come and take photos.
Wow.
So an 8-hour shoot seemingly was about half of it was just talking with fans, right? So there is a lot of passion for the car, good or bad or the other. But it's also it is kind of a brilliant thing. If you can get past the outer shell, which gets all the news and publicity, there's a lot of really cool innovations going on.
Yeah.
So the 48-volt architecture for the low voltage system sounds kind of innocuous and boring, but there's a lot of really cool benefits that come from that. We've been kind of carrying on this 12-volt system for 70 years, I think, and companies have thought about moving up the voltage. And the reason why it matters is if you want more powerful subsystems, like, for example, the motors to have steer-by-wire input, you can't do that on 12 volt. Right. You would have cables like this thick if you wanted to run a motor like that, like a 2 or 3 horsepower motor. So that 48 volt architecture is kind of a first in cars. Every other car that you see around is 12. And I can guarantee you in the next cycle, everyone will make that move. Yeah. That will happen. Steer-by-wire is interesting because we actually had a little bit of an issue with that truck.
Right.
The rear wheel steer kind of got seized up a little bit, so we had a little bit of an issue. Tesla Cybertrucks have an early problem with a little actuator motor on that. They got fixes rolling out now. But steer-by-wire is such an amazing thing. Just from about that much, that's lock to lock, and you're navigating in a car park.
It's extraordinary.
It is like a magic trick.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah.
We did that episode on canoe. Do you remember
Yes.
the canoe? The canoe was similar in terms of turning circle. It was
Right.
insanely good, like better than cars good. And if you drove the F-150 Lightning, that is really tough to get around in a car park, especially smaller ones. And it's really good, you know. There's breakthroughs in the Cybertruck that will make its way into every car that we see in a matter of time. But I feel like nobody talks about that because that design is just, it gets all the attention.
Yeah. And I mean, it is I mean, I just think, hats off to them for their marketing, but you know, the fact that it's bulletproof and for the post-apocalypse. But then I can't remember his name, but he does beautiful videos. Amazing engineering guy who does videos and he built incredible disability vehicles for his wife. Do you know who I mean? I can't remember his name. He's done hundreds of videos in the United States.
Is it Jerry Rig Everything?
Jerry Rig Everything. Thank you. But I don't know if you've seen.
Great guy, by the way.
The what? Sorry.
Zach is a great
He's an amazing guy.
Person.
Lovely guy. But he used various American firearms to test the bulletproof nature of the Tesla Cybertruck. But of course, he eventually used a 50 caliber, like a kind of machine gun you'd have on the top of a tank. And believe it or not, those bullets went through everything. Yeah. But anyway, it's kind of daft, really. But anyway, that is that. Now, the other thing that is different here and in Europe, and as I've just recently been in Australia, is Chinese cars. So that, and there's the discussion in America about Chinese cars and the notion of, for instance, I believe it's BYD talking about building a factory in Mexico so that they can import cars into the United States. I mean, is that something that gets discussed a lot in?
No.
Ah.
So I think that the Chinese car brands, I'm looking particularly at BYD, is going to come kind of like a shot out of the dark. It's because the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, has this kind of maybe false sense of security wrapped around companies, feeling like they're not going to see them for a while.
Yeah.
But these guys are going to build factories, battery manufacturing plants, get that North American supply chain, and show up on our shores pretty quickly.
Right.
And when that happens, all the legacy brands that are backtracking from EVs because they're making $70,000, $80,000 cars that people can't afford, and these guys show up with a $25,000 Seal or something, it's going to be really, really disruptive. I do worry a little bit about that, to be honest. Maybe I need to go hang out with Elliot and just pick his brain, but I do think that's going to be kind of a monumental shift. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I've sort of assumed that door's just shut and it's not going to affect the American market, but I think it probably is.
It's soft shut.
Yeah, and in a sense, it is the same thing. I can remember reading about like early Japanese cars coming here and going to Europe, and they were rubbish and they were Japanese, and they were we learned that when you think we'd learn then, and then it was Korean cars. Well, they're rubbish, and now look at those two countries have done incredibly
dominant,
well. Yeah. And now it's Chinese, which is and they're much bigger companies with much more behind them. I mean, the fact, I think the simple fact that really makes BYD in particular stand out is they were a battery company that made cars, not a car company that had to learn how to use these weird battery things. I mean, it's
very true. Yeah. And they have funding like Honda and Toyota did not back then.
Yeah.
So they've got a leg up, and they've already been selling like in Europe. So by the time they do reach the U.S. shores, they're going to have a huge, huge surge of momentum.
Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask Ricky at all? It's quite a long walk to the microphone. Oh, there's someone there. So there's a microphone, I think, near that side. Is there? Yeah, there's one. No, there's one here. There's one there. Well done, sir. Look at the enthusiasm there, Ricky. I mean, it's impressive.
Ricky. Hi, Ricky. Love your work, by the way, just to start off. So are you surprised with the backlash that we're seeing with electric FUD?
Could you say it one more time?
Are you surprised by the backlash and the anti-EV and where they're all catching fire and they've all got all these issues?
So not really. You have to imagine just how big of an industry disruption EVs are. The world has run on fossil fuels. Fossil fuel companies have been the biggest brands, the biggest market cap companies in the world since World War II, I don't know, for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Those companies are not going to go down without a fight, and that's what's kind of at play. So they also have large ownership stakes in media companies, so and I'm not surprised at all. But I do know our boy Dan Caesar is constantly on the battlegrounds on that fight, because I see him on Twitter, X, all the time. Yeah. And so I think that's what it comes down to, is providing the other side of the story. But these are massive, massive companies that are not going to be happy to see their profits dwindle away. But I think it's going to start happening if it hasn't already started.
I mean, because I don't know whether you've got quite the same level of anti-EV rhetoric in your mainstream press.
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay. Because we have plenty of it here. So I occasionally see bits of it in
very similar, actually. The US and the UK are very similar,
right.
Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, also, I think one has to acknowledge the incredible influence the benign Rupert Murdoch has had on both our countries' newspapers in particular. But
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, oh, okay.
So I've been thinking about this recently because my dad always told me, like, whatever your political views, watch the views from the other side. So watch the other party's news. So I'm watching more YouTube videos on cars, and one thing I've noticed is like EV viewership is down a little, and like gas car internal combustion engine stuff is still humming along. So I was watching some videos from outlets that don't really do EVs, but they will once in a while. And the general takeaway I always felt is gas cars are the passion and love.
Yeah.
EVs are these soulless things that no one seems to have any enthusiasm about, when there's so much to be enthusiastic for. So the question is, what do we do about that? Like, how do we shift that? Because, I mean, there's cars like that over there, which as soon as we hang up here, I'm going to go check that out. There's amazing electric vehicle options as well. Yes, the early stuff was more sedans and trucks, but there's going to be sports cars and convertibles. How do you get people excited about that?
I mean, I think the thing is that I feel the entire market is shifting generationally. So, I mean, I think young people now are less interested in cars than even 10 years ago, just in cars in general, not in anything specific. Yeah. And they are a thing you use to get around, or they're an Uber. You know, that so you don't. And if you live in a city and you're, say, under 35, do you want to buy a car? I mean, it's such a burden and a hassle and a expense, and you know, why would you bother when you can get around on the bus, on a bike, on an Uber? You know, there's so if you're in a big city. But I think that the other thing that I find interesting is the women I've spoken to who've got an electric car. Then they don't talk about it. They've just got it because they prefer it. And that, I think there is a market there that isn't going to watch YouTube videos, is not going to support Car Wow or Fully Charged. They're not interested. They just they got the car and now they just drive it, and they're not interested. And they probably, you know, it's just a thing. And that's, I mean, I always use the reference to my wife who's in a reading group, and I heard this back the other way from the people in her reading group, that she would turn up at their reading group in a car that I had, and they go, "Oh, is this one of Robert's special cars?" This is like 10 years ago. And she'd go, "It's just a car." And they go, "Oh, how do you charge it?" "You plug it in like your phone." "I don't want to talk about it." She's just not interested. She just drives the damn thing. There's 8 women in that group, and I heard from them, Judy wouldn't talk about it. She just told me to shut up and plug it in and get over it and watch it. And a lot of expletives. I mean, I won't repeat them now. She's Australian. She can't help it. It's in her DNA. But what happened is 4 of those women now have electric cars. So half of those women bought them because they were told, shut up about it, you just plug it in like a phone. You know, it was that whole aspect. So I think it's so difficult to know those big picture shifts in attitudes and how, you know, one of the things we've really noticed is, and this is not a good representation, this early morning audience today, but our viewership on YouTube is, we've really, really made an effort and we've improved it. It's about 92% men. So it's now about 8% women who watch the show, which I think is miraculous. When I first looked at those statistics on YouTube, it was 98% men. So we've made that enormous improvement. But the percentages at our live events, and I'm not sure if this will be the same here, but in all the ones before, it's about 40-60. About 40% of the people who come are women, because they're interested in the whole gamut of the thing, not just specifically the cars maybe, but But I think you're right. The passionate people who love petrol cars, they're not going to change. Well, they'll die out. That's all that will happen. They're not going to change.
There's probably some certain models that can make a change. Like, for example, the electric Range Rover, I think, is going to do wonders, especially here in the UK. Actually, the Americans love Range Rovers.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I love them too. I've always heard they're very hard to maintain and a lot of reliability.
Well, they have a lot of problems with electrics, which is a bit awkward when they're making an electric one.
Okay, well, my hope is that
they'll get that right.
There's this brilliant electric Range Rover, and it's electric, and it's 600 horse and faster than everything out there, and cheaper to operate than a family little a Corsa, and that'll be one of those cars that shifts the conversation like that one over there. Yeah. And I think when some of these, maybe a Jaguar,
yes. If they do a Jaguar, like a saloon Jaguar, would be amazing. Yeah,
I think something like that could help with.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I think it's a transition. So when people say to me, "Oh, I've heard the electric car sales are down," I go, "Well, they're not." But anyway, it doesn't make any difference because the movement and like Jaguar they've stopped making combustion engines. Mercedes have stopped doing any more research into combustion. They will stop. They know that's what's happening. So they're changing, and then what you see coming out of China is just such a huge tidal wave of very good product. I mean, I can't help, I've said this before, but I can't help repeating it. I saw BYD cars at the Geneva Motor Show in 2009, and honestly, they were dreadful. I'm not going to lie. I don't know a lot about it. Jack would be able to describe it better, but I would not have gone in one. They didn't look safe. They weren't made to anything close to North American or European standards. And then look at them now. And that's, 14 years. They've just transformed. And even then, there were some BYD taxis in London. Well, they had much greater range than any other electric car around at the time. So, they looked a bit shonky, but they worked really well. How are we doing, Francis? Are we...
What? Right here.
Oh, look at that!
So, Robert, any new...
I've been here all the time. We've got 12 seconds left. There's a massive number counting down there. I haven't even looked at it. I know that you're Ricky from 2-Bit Da Vinci, because it says there.
That's right.
And I'm Robert.
Have you not known all this whole time?
No, I haven't had a clue who I am or what we're doing.
We didn't really have enough time to get into home stuff, but I know you've got some really nice home electrification efforts going on. I do too.
Yeah. Now, quickly tell us what you've got, because I'll be jealous then. And the amount of sun you get is not fair.
Not so much recently, but generally, yes. Our electric prices are really high. Actually, this is probably the one place in the world where they're probably higher. But California's prices are so high. When I bought my house, our bills were $700-800 a month for electricity.
Okay.
Which is what my rent was when I graduated from university, right? So we knew we had to do something. So now we have solar, we have some batteries. The next thing is we have a pool. So the pool heating currently is natural gas, which bugs me, and it's also very expensive. But we want to get enough solar so we could heat the pool. And what would be really cool would be to use the cold side. So a heat pump heater heats the pool on the cold side. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to do this, but make some sort of a water from air capture system. So I can actually condense the water out of the air and collect it. So use both sides of it. This is the kind of nerdy stuff I think about, like when I'm, when I can't sleep at night. But there's stuff I'm going to be looking into.
But I just want to say that what I love is the fact that Ricky could just talk about the pool like it's like, well, you've got a front yard, a backyard, the pool. We don't have pools. Well, I have met one person who's got a pool in this country, but it's fairly rare. So I'm very impressed that you've got a pool. We are going to have to wrap it up now because we've gone over our limit, haven't we? Yes. So can we just give Ricky a big welcome to the UK and a big round of applause?
So glad to be here. Thank you guys so much for turning up. Really means a lot.
And he's on a lot of other panels over the weekend, so you're not rushing off now.
No. Cooking, yes,
great.
Live EV reviews.
Thank you very much.
I really hope you enjoyed that. Here is the podcast that we recorded a while ago is coming up. Just want to quickly say that we are doing another live event in Harrogate in May. All the links for all this are in the show notes of this episode, and we'll put all the links to Ricky's episodes in case you haven't seen them in there as well. And we'll be doing a lot more with him in the future. What a lovely dude he is. A really special man. We all adore him. He's got a big fan club within the company. So anyway, here is Ricky Roy
recorded, I think, last year.
Welcome to this episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast, and we're doing a bit of a podcast takeover today. I'm here with Ricky Roy.
How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Our California correspondent.
Yes, live at the Fully Charged Show.
And what are we sitting in?
This is a very special car. First time, I think, for you?
First time I've sat in it yet.
Rivian R1T. And this is imported, I think, from the US. You're on the wrong side of the wheel.
No, this is the wrong side of the wheel, yeah.
But it's quite a special thing.
Yeah.
This is more common in California, maybe not in the entire US, but this is one of those cars, every time I see it drive by, you just got to stop and look at it. It's such a thing.
I have to say, it is beautiful. And I'm not a big fan of pickup trucks, but this thing is wild.
This is super American. It's such an American thing, and it's electric, so we should love it doubly.
Even better. So we're here today at the Fully Charged Show live in Farnborough. It's second day. The sun is out.
Sun is out.
Finally. It was a bit miserable yesterday.
It was dreary. It was a little overcast.
Our lovely British weather for you there.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's a lot of cars to see here today. What's been some of your standout kind of attractions?
So the ID Buzz is a car we don't have yet.
Okay.
And it's coming. There's a long wheelbase American version, I think. It's maybe North American. And it's coming, but we don't have them. We don't see them. I saw Jack's episode.
Yeah.
Especially that color scheme in Jack's episode. And there's one out here with that look. It's such a pretty thing. And I think that will be one of the few vans in the U.S. that'll sell well. So that's been cool. Right in front of us, this is this Italian startup.
Is beautiful. It's such a good-looking car.
I think it is. Oh, it's gorgeous. Absolutely stunning thing. So
And
there's all kinds of cool new things, and also just all the offerings that you have in Europe that we don't have in the U.S. There's so much more to choose from.
Definitely. Now, there's a few cars here from China, and that's definitely one of the topics I want to talk about today is not US versus China, but US and China. So, you've just sat in a BYD.
Yes.
What were your impressions of that?
It's a car. It's remarkably great. It's actually really nice, and they've picked good size models, I think. That compact crossover segment is massive. It's one of the biggest in the US, and I think it'll sell well. But there's challenges. We can get to that, I think.
I think so.
It's a complicated story. There's more to it. There's layers, but
Definitely. And so, this is my first time sitting in a Rivian. It's the first time sitting in Ford F-150 Lightning. And it's just amazing to see the wealth and difference of cars that are here today. So let's touch on that US-China thing.
Before we start, can I just say, we were just over at the BYD booth, and the BYD representatives were telling us that they learn about their cars from Elliot and his videos. So I think you've become the de facto
BYD
center of knowledge of all things automotive in China. Which is
That's
amazing.
good. That's really good. Yeah. So I just don't understand because, it's your first time sitting in a BYD.
Yes.
And you were telling me earlier that Americans don't really have much idea about what's coming from China. Why is that?
So I kind of thought in Europe there was more, maybe just my bias from watching your videos. But in the US, if you did a poll of 1,000 Americans and asked them name one Chinese automaker, they wouldn't be able to. There's no press, there's no knowledge, there's no interest. It's just a kind of a blissful ignorance of it all. And I think that is troubling, especially when these cars start shipping, it'll catch people off guard. And I don't think the American market understands how far along some of these cars are. Those are just fantastic cars. They're ready to ship, and BYD is a big company. They're going to succeed in doing this. When they'll actually ship to the US, we'll find out. There's been some
challenges,
things and changes with the last couple of presidents, but it's just a matter of when. I don't know when that might be, but
what I really struggle with is why GM have just cancelled the Bolt. I mean, what are they doing? Is the US just going to become 100% trucks? Because it feels that way.
So I think GM has good intentions, but the execution, and I think that'll be a theme throughout, is I think we've passed the stage of cool prototypes and 3D renders and EVs are cool. I think we've passed that. I think everyone understands. And we've entered this age of execution. Like, can you do this? Rivian, the car we're sitting in, brilliantly good car. But
Definitely.
There's a execution that lays ahead that they have to prove and kind of get through. With GM, it's kind of the same problem. The Bolt was destined to have this fate because it doesn't have their new platform. The Bolt was a relic of a time when they just built this one-off EV. It uses LG Chem batteries, not their new Ultium stuff. So it was just a question of when. The foolish mistake I think GM made was refreshing it. They made a whole new model with the Bolt EUV and the bigger one, and why? If you knew that it wasn't on your new platform, it was destined to be a relic, why even bother? Just go right into Ultium, build the cars that matter. By that rationale, why build the Hummer next? This massive 200, it has a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. How big is the pack in the Dolphin or one of these cars?
Probably around 60 kilowatts.
Yeah, you could build 3 of those for the amount of battery cells you would need. It's just an insane type of, I do think they have the right intentions. Execution feels a little lacking.
And what I'm also really surprised about, and you've seen the video of like the Wuling Mini EV Cabrio.
What a thing.
Amazing, right? Do you see yourself driving that in California?
I don't know if that would be road legal in California. Have
not.
You seen the kinds of cars people drive in the U.S.? It's an arms race in the U.S., right? Where I live, you'll see people with Ford F-350s.
F-350?
Lifted, driving by themselves, not even a bag of groceries.
Oh, no.
How does that end? If you're driving the Wuling Mini and you come across one of those,
You probably put one in the back.
you could. Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
incredible. But that Wuling is a GM product.
Is it?
It's a GM, Wuling, and SAIC product. So obviously their Chinese arm is not talking to their US arm.
Right.
But they're producing cars that people are buying. It's one of the best-selling cars in China, beating Tesla.
Really?
So I just don't understand their strategy, really.
So could there be a collaboration for a U.S. car with the GM badge on it?
Sure, why not?
That actually might be the best way to enter the market, right?
I think
Especially
so.
if you have the same badge as what Americans are used to.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that. I didn't know they had a partnership.
Yeah, so, and we were saying earlier that Buick, not a particularly popular car in the US.
The opposite. The opposite, yeah.
Whereas in China, it's massively popular. They've got wagons, they've got the GL8, it's a station wagon, and they've got loads of cars, I can't even remember. But they've got a really good market, but in the US, just a bit.
So I remember watching a GM announcement, and I was like, why are they catering to like the Chinese market? It didn't make any sense to me. And then I pulled up the numbers. Yeah, the Buick sells very little in the US. It's not a popular car. It has like this old man, it's like this old middle-aged salesman type of a vibe. But in China, they're brilliant. I mean, they're big and they're liked for whatever reason. It's an interesting, I can't quite figure that out. Why are they popular in China? I couldn't tell you.
I don't know why either. They've just been, historically, they've been there a long time and been very functional and useful. They are a bit of an old man car in China as well. You're either a big like coal mining boss who needs to be ferried about to his next coal mine, and you get at the back of a GL8. That's why they're popular. But like young people aren't really buying them.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
No. And so what do you think it will take for Chinese automakers to get over to America?
So first of all, it might be a couple of years because I think the Inflation Reduction Act has kind of put all plans on pause because now you're playing with a $7,500 handicap.
Yeah.
Even if they make a brilliant car and the price is really good, is it $7,500 better than something that the Americans can make or somebody who has a plant? So the first part would be, what if BYD built a factory in the US, right? I mean, VinFast, the Vietnamese car company, is doing that.
Yeah.
They're building a factory, I believe, in South Carolina. So maybe that's the answer. And then you have your North American supply chain, you qualify for the credit. The one cool thing about the IRA, it doesn't really specify like you have to be American. It's just you have to have a North American supply chain, free trade agreements, that sort of thing. So there's nothing keeping them from doing that, and maybe that's the way to do it.
And then Ford were in talks with CATL, the battery maker, to build a factory as well.
Yeah.
So they're obviously planning to do it, and I think it will be probably just a few years until you get your first Chinese cars there. And so what do you think is going to be the reception of the American consumer to driving a Chinese car? This is a bit of a spicy topic.
It's quite spicy. The difference would be the general perception versus in my opinion, it'll be conservative news outlets that really paint this picture. And if you look at like Trump, I think was the first to really put that in the American mind, the psyche, this idea of Chinese brands. So there's Chinese brands that are beloved. We were talking yesterday about DJI.
Yeah.
DJI is just killing it. We have DJI drones and camera gimbals, and they make the best products.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah.
They have a massive presence. They have their HQ in Shenzhen, but if you ask the average American, they don't think it's a Chinese brand. So the actual perception and the news kind of propaganda of it all, if you will, is quite different. So it'll kind of depend upon where people get their news from, their political leanings, and all of that. That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
And there's maybe not a great answer of how to overcome that.
No, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy entry, I think, into the US. But we were saying, you think BYD, Build Your Dreams, is a very fitting name for a car to be sold in America, right?
BYD. They actually spelled it out on the back
Yes.
plate, which is interesting. Build your dreams. We were joking earlier about the Chinese. They make an effort to appeal, to have the right branding, marketing,
Yeah.
and sometimes the English, the translation's just a hair off. But build your dreams. I think if you saw that rolling around the American streets, you probably wouldn't immediately know unless you knew what to
Yeah.
look for. So I think name-wise, it's good. We also kind of mentioned, I think the playbook that everybody outside of the US should copy is Hyundai Kia. They were seen as a kind of a low-quality brand 20 years ago. I remember when I was a kid, oh, you got a Kia. Oh,
Yeah.
Is everything okay? Is work not going? Yeah. But now it's a really killer brand. Their designs, I mean, first of all, they just got all the bosses from Audi and all the
that's
big
right.
players, which is great. But then what they did was, over about 15 years, they completely changed the narrative. Pretty remarkable, actually. But they, for example, we mentioned 10-year warranty, 10-year unlimited warranty. When Honda and Toyota, the cars that people probably wanted to get, were 4 years. So if you see that and you think, yeah, I kind of like the idea of a 10-year warranty. I don't want to have any repairs. And they make good cars and they stand by it. And slowly over time, with great design, they just keep hitting it, good commercials, appeal. It's the perception is reality component, and in the U.S. that looms large.
Yeah.
You have to bald eagles, cowboy boots. You just gotta sell to the.
You just gotta go all in, haven't you?
Yes.
So we think maybe they should rename Build Your Dreams to Build Your American Dreams, BYAD.
BYD. It becomes a mouthful. It'd be hard to spell out.
Yeah, not enough space on the back.
I think Build Your Dreams will work. The other thing they could do is they could have another brand for the U.S., right? Honda, Lexus.
Yeah, that's true. Like
Honda,
Genesis.
Acura, Genesis, right? Lexus. So what everyone's learned, and this is even premium German brands, Volkswagen couldn't sell the Phaeton for $80,000 because nobody wants an $80,000 Volkswagen. That's just not, it doesn't compute.
No.
So make it an Audi and it'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
Make it a Lexus, and now you have the LS for $100,000 and people buy them by the hundreds and thousands. So maybe they should make a specific American product, same underpinnings, couple little things different, new brands and badges and commercials and the marketing push. So that would be my personal feedback would be offer something compelling, a massive warranty, double everybody else's, stand by your product. For electric cars, it should be easy. And 2, maybe a custom nameplate for the US. Factory in the US, and I think you're in.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, if any automaker wants to contact Ricky, I'm sure he can help your US strategy. One other automaker, which we should probably talk about, is Tesla. Because for me, I see them as both China and American-based. So they've obviously got the Gigafactory in Shanghai.
Yeah.
You're an owner.
Yeah.
What do you think the future holds for Tesla as the tensions rise between the US and China? Is Tesla going to fall out of favor? Are they innovating quickly enough in order to beat the Chinese market? What do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years?
Excellent question. So first of all, Tesla's popular in China, right?
Very
American
popular.
brands have no problem going to China.
No.
So, globalization, ideally, hopefully, more choice, more options is a good thing, and the opposite is true. We'll see. I'm not sure. But I think Tesla's going to be just fine. If you look at their last investor relations day, their media day, when they talked about the new batteries, or the new motors, that have no rare earth metals, everybody was underwhelmed. As the engineer in me, I was incredibly impressed.
Yeah.
And the reason is they're at a different level now. They're not trying to garner attention. Like the Cybertruck was an attention grabbing move. It's like, look what we could do. Stainless steel exoskeleton. This is, we're about to completely disrupt how motors are made, bring down cost. And everything about what Tesla's doing seems to be all around profit margin, cost. I think they make more per sales of an EV than anybody else.
They do, yes.
Ford, Rivian included, anybody included. And so if they can remove the need for neodymium and other rare earth metals like they're going to, which by the way, they all come from China, and they could just build proper good magnets using iron with some interesting chemistries and things that they're working on. There's a company in Minnesota that's helping them with this. That's a huge win, because if their motors now cost 50% less, their packs are already probably some of the cheapest. The Chinese will definitely disrupt there. It'll be close. In a lot of ways, I almost feel like both the Chinese and Tesla are really hyper-focused on the business component.
Yeah.
While others are still on the marketing side.
Yeah.
Like they're still trying to, EVs are cool, you should check one out, get a Ford Lightning. They're still on that stage. And Tesla seems like they've completely passed that up. So I think Tesla's going to be just fine. Some of the other companies probably should be taking note, especially as the Chinese brands arrive. What do you think? What's your take?
You know, Tesla's an interesting one. So my wife actually went to drive one a couple of weeks ago. She's like, everyone's driving one, and they are everywhere in Shanghai. Yeah. And it's a really good value proposition. It's £22,000 for a new Tesla, and you get it in 2 to 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that for the 3?
Yeah, this is Model 3.
Is there a tax credit or something? Is there some component to that?
There's a very little. You get about $1,000, so not that much. So, because what they're doing is they realise sales are softening in China because there's so many other brands, new stuff coming out. So what they did, they reduced their prices in January this year, then they did it again, then they did it again. And so they're just reducing their prices, so they're basically entering new segments, which they couldn't compete with before because they were too expensive. And so with that, all of the Chinese automakers are now releasing cars and then instantly discounting them. BYD just released a new car, the Seagull. It's really small. And they reduced the price 6% within a day. And so this kind of price drop is really putting pressure on everyone. And I think what they're going to come up against is they're going to saturate the market, fine. More people driving EVs is better than ICE cars. But what they're going to do is going to make their products less premium. So Tesla is seen as a premium product, but by reducing the prices, they're going to go into that kind of middle kind of market. And they're not innovating enough. So, the Model 3 is how many years old now?
Yeah, 2018, 2017.
Yeah, so that's old.
Yeah, it is.
And so,
there's a refresh coming.
The refresh is coming, but it's.
Is it enough?
Not really. I don't think so.
I do like it. I think it cleans up some stuff, but it's really just very cosmetic and very minor. Right?
Yeah, and then the Chinese automakers have radar, lidar, their self-driving tech. I feel is a bit more advanced than Tesla's, and it's available on the roads in China. FSD you can't get in China, and I don't think you ever will. So there's, Tesla could be facing quite a rocky time over the next few years, unless they develop that cheaper Model 2 that they've been talking about forever, which is meant to be being designed in the Chinese design studio, I think.
Yeah, right.
That's the rumor.
I think they potentially could build it in the Mexican Gigafactory as well. Their latest North American factory will be in Monterrey, Mexico, which is a really cool little tech hub. Kia, Hyundai have factories there. It's just kind of a brain center in Mexico. So I think they're going to be building them there. But I don't think that car comes to the U.S. Well, we can get to that later. But to your point about the premium segment and not Mercedes doesn't make $20,000 cars for a reason. It would hurt the sales of
completely.
If everyone had them, the prestige, the allure would kind of dissipate a little bit.
Exactly. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Tesla. I'm quite excited to see how they're going to manage their way through this, especially with US-China relations as well.
So the one I would push back on is Tesla doesn't really refresh their models all that much. Part of the reason is it keeps costs down. The average car company, and in my opinion, car companies don't want to make new cars. They would happily just sell the same car forever. The Toyota 4Runner, for example, the Tacoma, they refresh those very rarely, and they cannot make enough of them. The 4Runner in America, and I had one as a kid, They're unbelievably brilliant cars, and they refresh them every 8 or 9 years, about twice as long as the average car. Tesla's opinion, I think, is the software, we can add new features, we'll add cool stuff, we'll keep you delighted. And the outside of the car kind of remains the same, but you'll still have that sensation of new and premium stuff. And it kind of works. I've had my car for 3 years, and every so often, we talked about this, there's a new feature in Tesla where when the light turns green, you're at a stop, it'll play a little ding. So if you're goofing off on your phone, which every Californian is always doing, instead of having to have the person behind you honking to tell you, your car will tell you. And it's instant, and it's really cool. And suddenly, it just showed up one night. How delightful.
Yeah.
There's a sense of delight when you get stuff like that over the air. So their play has always been on the software side. We'll just build cars that are, very high profit margin. To your point about the price drops, when you're making 22, 24% profit margins, you can lower prices and still be profitable. Whereas the other, like the Fords and GMs, they're on razors and they were barely price competitive. And now you look at something and it's hard to justify the added cost of a ID4 or a Mach-E when the Model Y is just kind of brilliant and cheap. Affordable. Sorry, cheap is not the right word.
Affordable.
Good value.
It feels to me that they're taking a note out of the Apple iPhone and the Samsung Book. So Apple's design hasn't really changed that much, but the software, gets better and better. It's basically the same, but it gets better and better. Whereas Samsung is bringing out a new phone every 20 minutes, and it's like, no, that's still not going to sell very well. And they've changed designs hundreds of times. It feels to me a bit like that because we're moving into that kind of digital age. These are seen as more of appliances than cars for a lot of people. Maybe not for me and you, but for a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is a cool gadget. So, I think I actually do agree with you.
That's actually a brilliant analogy, the Samsung Apple. It's frustrating. I'm an Apple user, a diehard Apple fan, always have been. But sometimes I see the new phone and I'm just thinking, what? You changed nothing.
Nothing. Oh, we've got a notch in the top.
It's a brilliant new notch and the camera is 20% better. Give us $1,200, right? But their margins similarly are massive. Samsung, by the way, over years of hard work and dedication, they have a similarly premium segment as well. Their phones are not cheap. They used to be.
No.
They're also 1,000 plus. That's an interesting analogy. I think that's probably pretty fair to say with what Tesla's doing.
And let's quickly talk about the Rivian, because I obviously have never sat in one, I've never driven one. This is really...
It's nice. Look at the little cutouts in the seat.
It's just so well thought through, and it doesn't feel like a big pickup truck. It feels quite compact and cozy in here, and the material quality's great.
It's all soft touch.
Yes.
The wood grain.
The wood. Is that real wood?
Yeah.
Wow.
It kind of has that driftwood kind of look. Yeah, it's premium all around. Everywhere you look and touch.
And the screen is just really crisp and not big and garish. I often think, in China we're at the cutting edge a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no one else can do, anything better than the Chinese automakers. It's a little bit silly of me, but I sit in this and I think, okay, Chinese automakers could learn from American automakers. I mean, you guys have been doing it for 100 years. I mean, you invented automotive manufacturing with Ford, right? So, I mean, do you think this car would do well in a market like China? They love big cars, by the way, in China. So
there's big cars and there's pickup trucks. Would they find that useful?
So the pickup version, no, but there's the
R1S.
The R1S, the Jeep version, that looks really nice.
So as soon as they can make the R1S by the hundreds of thousands, absolutely China would be a great market because it's a massive, gorgeous thing. Inside, would you say this is more premium than Tesla's stuff?
Yes, I say
the
this
Alcantara,
is definitely.
There's it's just a kind of a cut above, I do think, as well.
What this feels like to me is Neo. So, Neo, they're kind of going for that luxury premium segment market. Very similar feel to Neo. Like the screen, the Alcantara, the metal, the wood. It does feel like that, and the size as well.
I've always said this is a really important car because Tesla has done well. They've made it. And I think when one company does something that changes the perceived barrier, but it is impossibly difficult to build cars. And Rivian's in the thick of it now. Tesla's kind of gotten past it. Their 3 and Y lines are rocking and rolling. Yeah. So they're good. But Rivian's in the thick of it now. And I think it's really important that they succeed. Otherwise, we haven't proven that EVs are here. We've proven one company could do it, Tesla, with however they managed to do it. So I think it's important that this also does well.
And what we talk about this, well, I talk about this all the time. I'm talking about legacy brands versus Chinese brands. Do you think there's any brands in the States, in America, that are potentially in trouble with what's coming? Because I really feel that GM is in trouble because of the whole bulk move, and they're just a bit slow. Do you think there's anyone who's going to be really threatened by what's coming?
I want to ask you first. So you mentioned GM.
Yeah, so GM definitely. I think Ford will be okay. They've taken a pretty active approach to electrifying all of their range. I think it's a bit of a shame they're getting rid of the smaller cars in Europe, and they're going in with like the bigger cars. But the F-150 Lightning, which is just over there, looks incredible. It's a good truck. It's a good truck. You know, it's going to sell very well if they can sort out the dealer network issues. For me, it's GM. 100% GM. They're too big. They're too complacent. They're not connected to the rest of the world. I mean, I don't even know if they understand what's going on in China with their brand.
They've got Buick. They'll be fine.
No. Well, and like Cadillac, we've got the Lyric. That's selling in China right now.
Is it?
Yep.
Is it well received?
Not particularly.
No.
It's not selling very well. It's just they're trying to make it this cool, fun, young brand, but it's just an old man brand, I'm afraid.
I actually think it's easier to make a new brand than to try to change the perceptions that people have. Perceptions in people's minds, almost impossible to change, right?
Yeah.
Like Tesla, for example. You would think American brand would be great. A lot of Americans, like middle America, hate it.
I know.
And they see it as this internet, like this foreign thing. This is as American as it gets. I have a car built in California. If you told me that 10 years ago, I would have said you're crazy.
Yeah.
California is notoriously stupid expensive for everything, labor and all of it. I have a car made in California. Forget just designed, like Apple says, designed in California, made in China. This is made in America. It's one of the most American cars, and it's still difficult because of the perceptions and things. So, yeah, Cadillac has a tough road. That's a fair point. Ford, though, is brilliant because they electrified the Mustang Mach-E. It's not really a Mustang, and that rubs some people the wrong way, but those people weren't going to buy electric cars anyway. And then the next thing up, F-150, which is the thing that they make.
The best-selling car ever.
Yeah, they sell 500,000 on a down year of F-150s, almost 1 million on a good year, and it's really important that they electrified it. So that kind of shows you where their head is at. But at the same time, they haven't really invested as much in like a platform, and that's how you get profit margins, right? The F-150 is a body-on-frame truck like every other truck with batteries stuck in places, and there's not a lot to like grow from that.
No.
It's kind of like the Bolt. The Bolt was a dead end. It was a good car, you sell them, you make them, but beyond that, it doesn't leverage you into other things, right? The Model 3 became the Model Y, 75% blown up. But with Ford, so here's a crazy thing. GM feels foolish and kind of behind, but they do have platforms. They've built like, okay, here's our big truck, which is what the Hummer is based on. They'll make a Suburban on that same platform. Yeah. They have the batteries. They've got the battery manufacturing is something that they'll have to prove because the Bolt had too many battery recalls. In my mind, it's hard enough to sell cars, and now you have these recalls and all the fire stuff. It's no good. And it's very hard to overcome some of that stuff. Tesla's never had that. They've always just kind of seemed to know what they're doing in a way that GM hasn't. But let's hope they can turn things around. The big three, now it's Stellantis, Dodge, and them. They're not making Chargers and all the muscle cars, and they're leaning on the electric stuff. A lot of fake sound pumped into the cabin, which you can take it or leave it. The Mach-E does it too. I think they're trying. It'll be a difficult road. If you have a gasoline segment that you'll be cannibalizing, that is a horrible place to be right now. Tesla, BYD doesn't make gas cars. They have nothing to lose. We mentioned VinFast in Vietnam, same thing. They're all in, they're full speed ahead. But with Ford and everybody else, every step is, are we ready to lose 600,000 F-150s a year to do this? We can't even make them by the 50,000 a year. The battery issues and limitations.
Yeah, of course.
It's a tough spot to be in, for sure.
But at least they're making steps in the right direction, so. But the other thing we did mention was the issues with the dealer markups. So with Tesla, you just buy it on your phone or on your computer, right? Or you go into a showroom. It's very easy. but with Ford, with a lot of the other companies, can I buy that car at the cost that it says it is? No.
No.
So how much is the markup on a F-150, for example?
So I think it's leaned up a little bit. It's not as bad as it was, but in the height of all the nonsense, when used cars were selling for ridiculous amounts of money, when I should have sold my Model 3, when I could have made money on it, they had $30,000 to $40,000 markups. So if it was a
hang on, $30,000 to $40,000.
Yeah, and there were people who bought them. There were people who bought them with the markup, and they listed them for sale again with a $20,000 markup.
God, that is nuts.
So that would take a $70,000 truck and make it $150,000, $130,000. And there were people who wanted them. If you have money and there's a cool new toy, it's not crazy, especially in low volume. They were not making very many of them. So the markups in the dealer network is a huge, huge problem. GM has already kind of faced it head on. They offered a buyout to Cadillac dealers who said, look, do you want to sell EVs? If you do, you got to invest money, you got to put in chargers, you got to do certain things, training, there's a whole thing. And that's another thing, by the way, convincing like internal combustion mechanics. Now you're going to go be an IT professional, a networking professional, try to troubleshoot an electric car. But so they gave that option, and for companies that said, or the dealers that said, no interest in EVs, they would buy them out and kind of reclaim that franchise as part of their umbrella. It's a massive undertaking and super expensive, as you can imagine. It doesn't scale well. So the dealer network, which was a perceived strength, could very quickly be the greatest weakness, absolutely.
And it seems very strange to me because every car in China you can just buy on your phone. I could probably do it now in front of you in about a minute. It's like, I've bought a new Wuling Mini EV.
So no dealer network.
So there are dealers, but there's no markups. The price is the price, and that's it. Even if it's a super popular model, you just go in the queue and they'll get it out to you in a few months. And that's the biggest thing that's holding the companies in China back, because there's such a demand. So we actually ordered a BYD Dolphin, my wife and I, about a year ago, and we had to wait over 6 months. So we just cancelled the order after 6 months because it still wasn't coming.
Wow.
And they're still selling like 100,000 of them a month. So their backlog is, 500,000 cars.
Jesus.
It's just on another level. So yeah, luckily we don't have the dealer markups, but I have seen a lot of US vehicles now coming to China. All ICE vehicles, but we get Ford F-150 pickup trucks. We get the Rams. These are all ICE. Lots of Lincolns. Like really big cars. I'm really worried we're starting to go down that route of more SUVs and less small cars. It just seems like it's the natural thing to do, and it's a bit of a shame.
I think that is an inevitability, and we're not coming back.
You think so?
Sadly, no. I'm on a panel later talking about like why do we love SUVs? I think it's hard to go back. Once you have a bigger car, it's hard to go back. It's a tough road to walk back. Just sad. But if they're electric, at least that's a step in the right direction. And there are ways to make SUVs and things more efficient. This is not it. This is about 2 miles per kilowatt hour. If you're driving nicely, it could be much lower pretty easily. The F-150 is similar. But like my Model Y, which has a third row, not a big third row, but like children can fit in it, does almost 4. There's not a big penalty. So we don't have to hate on them entirely, but it does require some aerodynamic modeling and sculpting to get. Because what you don't want is a bunch of EVs that are terribly inefficient, that require way more charging. Because if you need twice as much charge, that's twice as much demand on the grid when all these cars are DC fast charging. All this stuff matters, and I think, yes, we need the trucks and stuff are good, it's okay, but we need to have some sort of efficient thing. That, I'd imagine, is incredibly efficient. Just look at the design of it.
That's
and it's
so
massive.
sleek. Yeah,
it's a big thing.
It's huge.
We're talking about the Italian startup here.
Yeah,
such a pretty thing.
It's a beautiful car.
Yeah.
I think maybe just one more kind of area I want to talk about is there's obviously a lot of electric motorbikes here. The electric bikes. I wonder is that something that's going to explode? Not literally. Is that something that's going to become more popular in the States? So I'll give you China as an example. There are no petrol bikes as in mopeds on the roads in Shanghai, in Shenzhen.
I've heard that.
Everyone rides electric bikes. So we've jumped a step, which is great because they're quiet, they're efficient, easily charged, and they're just so much better. And then there's a lot of people who still ride pedal bikes. Whereas I see a lot of videos on YouTube about the US and things, stroads and how they're so unfriendly to pedestrians. Is that something, do you think, which will ever change? Or is there a movement that's beginning to make that change in the US? Or do you think it's inevitable, everyone's just going to end up driving SUVs forever and Cybertrucks?
So I was in India recently, where I'm from, and there's a change happening there too. So India and China, just the pollution issues, there's such
horrific,
huge amounts of people. It all just matters so much. And there's a move to electric. A lot of the new scooters and stuff are electric. And all you need is like an 8 kilowatt-hour battery pack to completely take care of your entire day of riding around, which is great. Europe as well. A comment we often get from European viewers, Asian viewers is, ditch the car, ride a bike. It's like, I don't think that's going to happen in the US. First of all, our roads are not pedestrian friendly in the way the European cities are. There are places in Europe where it's bad to be in the car, which is crazy, which is the opposite of the US. So the safety of it, I've had friends who've, somebody opens a door, comes out of a left turn, and you're picking pebbles out of your skin. It's not
not nice.
It's not nice. And so that might be a tougher sell. I think the efficient electric cars are going to be as green as Americans are going to get, honestly. I don't think it'll be easy to convince. I mean, there are some people who ride bikes. It's not like there's none, but just it's not in a meaningful quantity to really push the needle.
No, I think for you guys, for me, it feels like it'll be in the bigger cities, like maybe Portland, maybe New York.
Some of the more hip
Austin.
and trendy.
Yeah. And I think it might, be more popular there rather than anywhere else. So what's been your best experience of the show so far this weekend?
Just the people, the energy have been amazing. But for me, really, it was pretty eye-opening to see how many models of EVs there are in Europe that we just don't have in the US, especially the Chinese ones. Like, to your point, I got a chance to sit in the Dolphin, the space, the premium materials, the quality of it all. It's fantastic. So come out and test drive something. You can see some of the amazing new things that are coming out. And now we have cars being unveiled at Fully Charged Live. How cool is that?
I think for me, again, it's the people, like you said, the energy. Everyone's so enthusiastic, and they are, like you, seeing a BYD for the first time. Yeah. I'm excited because I'm in a Rivian for the first time. I'll be about to be in a Ford F-150 in a minute. So, yeah, I think come down. The next show is in Harrogate in just a few weeks.
Absolutely.
All right, I think that's all we've got time for today. So thank you for speaking today, Ricky.
Absolute pleasure.
And we're going to go off and enjoy the rest of the show. Have a little walk around.
Yes.
Maybe explore the F-150 a bit more. You show me around that car.
Yes. Let's go drive it. We'll do some off-roading.
Oh, I think we can actually. Let's do that.
Yeah, it's got some muddy.
Yeah, there are lots of muddy fields. Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Cheers.
Please support our Stop Burning Stuff Patreon and help us to tackle misinformation about electric vehicles and clean energy.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Really hope you enjoyed that. Please do subscribe. Please tell your friends about the Fully Charged show in general, Everything Electric show in general, and obviously the Fully Charged show podcast specifically, because that really helps spread the word. We are getting more and more views, and we're getting more and more subscriptions, so that's really good. We're still a growing concern, is the basic gist of the message. So we really hope you enjoy these shows, and we're going to be doing a lot more. I'm recording a lot more in the near future with some really fascinating people with some very challenging ideas. So I'm really looking forward to that. Please come back next week. And as always, if you have been, thank you for listening/watching.